The sharp U-turn for the US President Donald Trump, putting the brakes on plans to meet with Vladimir Putin in Budapest to discuss a possible ceasefire in Ukraine. He says it could be a waste of time after Russia made it clear it's not willing to freeze the war along current battle lines. Well, that's a major sticking point for President Trump, Ukraine and Europe. Hours after the Budapest meeting was shelved, Ukrainian cities, including the capital Kyiv, came under heavy Russian bombardment, forcing emergency power cuts and killing several people. Stopping the fighting very much in focus at the White House today. President Trump is due to sit down with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte this afternoon. Their meeting coming one day after European leaders agreed that more pressure needs to be put on Russia. Joining us to discuss all of this, the senior White House reporter Kevin Liptak and our international diplomatic editor Nick Robertson. Kevin, let's turn to you first, though, with that turnaround at the White House on the meeting with President Putin, because the Kremlin are claiming that this is still on, even though Donald Trump says he doesn't want to waste his time. What are you hearing?
Yeah, and the president did say yesterday that he would update us in 2 days on his latest thinking on Russia, although given his sort of record on deadlines, I'm not sure we should be holding our breath. You know, officials say that a summit is possible, perhaps down the road, perhaps when they have more clarity from the Russian side about what exactly they're willing to do in order to bring this war to an end. But I think it was pretty clear listening to President Trump yesterday, but also in conversations behind the scenes with officials, they do not think that the time is opportune at the moment to hold this summit, which is a huge reversal. You know, President Trump just last week said that he could be meeting with Putin in Budapest within 2 weeks' time. And I think that there was a critical moment on Monday when the Secretary of State Marco Rubio got on the phone with Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, and Lavrov essentially said that Russia was not willing to back off any of the maximalist positions that it has held throughout the course of this war, namely that Ukraine give up the entire Donbass region as part of any peace settlement. And Rubio came back to the White House and briefed officials and said that in his view, the time was not right for a Trump-Putin summit because nothing could really be accomplished. And the president does seem to have absorbed that sentiment and now is saying that this is not going to happen, at least in the near term. So, you know, I think for the president, he's clearly very frustrated that he hasn't been able to bring this war to an end. He had thought that his ability to broker a truce in Gaza might lend some momentum to these efforts. And I think after that phone call that he had with Putin last week, he did think that there was some kind of an opening. And you heard that from officials as well. They thought that perhaps Putin might have some wiggle room, essentially, in some of these demands. Lavrov seems to have suggested otherwise, which is why this summit is off for now. But, you know, at least according to everyone I've talked to, they're not ruling out the possibility that this could happen just further down the line. Now, we know that both Lavrov and Rubio will be in Malaysia this week on the sidelines of an ASEAN summit. President Trump will be there as well. It's possible that they meet again and that Lavrov comes bearing some new information about what Russia might be willing to agree to. But certainly, it doesn't seem as if this summit is on track for happening next week, which is what President Trump originally projected when he announced it last week.
Yeah, and Nick, just hours after that potential face-to-face, the second potential face-to-face fell apart, there were reports of major strikes on infrastructure, civilian buildings in Ukraine, including, I think, a kindergarten school. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the kindergarten school was today in Kharkiv in the northeast of Ukraine, and a missile struck either directly in the kindergarten or a building very adjacent to it. And the images you can see of the children's toys and clothes scattered and strewn around this very damaged building. One person was killed, 7 were injured, but that comes on the strikes that happened in Kyiv, the capital, other parts of the country, at least 6 people killed there, dozens more injured. It is part of Russia's apparent efforts, not just to sort of terrorize the civilian population, but also targeting the energy infrastructure. And you've had President Zelensky today in Sweden, meeting there, going to a factory, a Saab factory. Now they make the Gripen fighter jets. The scale and scope of any order that might come from Ukraine, if they're going to buy Gripen fighter jets, will be significant. Plays into Europe's narrative of supporting and spending domestic European money to support Ukraine's defense. And then he went on to Norway, where the prime minister there met him at the airport and offered $150 million for gas, for energy for Ukraine, which is vital. And of course, Zelensky saying he was very grateful for that. But Russia's tactic here is this twofold tactic we've seen of sort of terrorize the population, increase its drones' reach, scale, scope, ability to strike and sort of cheat and beat Ukraine's air defense system, and damage and impair the energy infrastructure across country. And to that point, continue to be rolling outages, power outages across country.
And Kevin, just briefly, we are expecting, as we mentioned, NATO Secretary General to be meeting with Trump later today. Do we have any specifics yet of what might be discussed?
Yeah, and this meeting seems to have been put together pretty quickly after that meeting with Zelensky at the White House on Friday turned somewhat tense. You know, Mark Rutte is considered something of a Trump whisperer among European leaders. And I think the hope is that he comes to the White House, one, to get a better sense of where Trump's head is at when it comes to meeting with Putin, when it comes to brokering an end to the war, but also to convey to the president what the Europeans are doing on this front. You know, there's been talk about this potential 12-point plan that they're putting together to broker an end to the conflict that would have to involve Trump, certainly in some capacity, before it can get signed off on. And so I think this will be kind of a critical meeting as the two of them really try and touch base about what exactly the future of this will be. And certainly President Trump will want to tell him whether or not he thinks Putin is serious about ending the conflict.
Yeah, and we will look to see as well, where we go on that demand to freeze the war along the current battle lines. As you point out, Nick, of course, we're coming into winter, and of course, energy infrastructure is already under attack. For now, thank you both. We will look to see where that meeting with Rutte goes later today.
Joining us now is CNN Global Affairs analyst Brett McGurk and also retired Army Brigadier General Steve Anderson. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Brett, first, I'd like to get your response to what you make of Zelensky's comments, where he says, look, this is a good compromise to stop where they are right now, to start these ceasefire negotiations.
Well, Sarah, it's great to be here. So once again, Ukraine and President Zelensky is accepting a proposal from the Americans. Freeze the lines, let's have a ceasefire. He's clearly accepting that. And what is Vladimir Putin doing? He is overseeing nuclear exercises, including the test of the Yars missile, which can fly 7,000 miles. Putin does not do anything by chance. He is signaling that he is prepared to escalate this conflict. I think that is obviously what he's doing. A couple things going on, though, Sarah. EU leaders will get together tomorrow to consider a proposal to basically use Russian assets that are frozen in European banks as collateral for a loan to Ukraine. That's a very important initiative. I think something the United States can get behind to put more pressure on Russia. The president, of course, has called on the EU to do more. That's good. And the president's meeting today with the NATO Secretary General. Bottom line, President and the U.S. trying to get the pieces together for a ceasefire to stop this war. But that's going to require some deliberate pressure on the Russians. And once again, Putin is saying he's not ready to do that. So that's where we stand. It's where we've been for the last 9 or 10 months.
Brigadier General, just a few days ago, there was what appeared to be the Trump administration leaning towards giving long-range missiles to Ukraine, those Tomahawk missiles. That all changed after a phone call with Putin and Trump. Do you think that Putin is playing Trump here?
Absolutely, Sarah. I mean, he did it a couple of months ago in Alaska, and he's doing it again. And I don't understand his strange hold that he's got on President Trump. I mean, Vladimir Putin is essentially a paper tiger. Their military is not that effective. I mean, a snail that had left the Ukraine east border 3.5 years ago would be in Poland by now. I mean, that's how ineffective his military is. The United States needs to get behind Zelensky, get behind Ukraine, who's fighting for all of us. And there's really 3 specific things I think that I would recommend to President Trump. Number 1, we need to give him the Tomahawks they've asked for. Number 2, we need to get American and NATO contractors approved for deployment within Ukraine so they can help maintain some of the equipment that we've given them. And the third thing is that we need to get Ukrainian drones manufactured in the United States. We need to use our manufacturing capability. President Trump wants to increase manufacturing in the United States. This is a great way to do it. leverage the technology that the Ukrainians are using. I mean, every 2 weeks, the technology is turning over. They're now changing protocols mid-flight in flying drones. That's how rapidly they're changing. So we need to do those things, get behind Ukraine right away.